There are some people out there who absolutely cannot stand driving. Whether it be the traffic, inconsiderate drivers, or simply the endless drone of tires on asphalt, some people just loathe it. I, on the other hand, love driving. That's probably a byproduct of my childhood, though. When I was younger, my mother used to take me to work with her every day. She couldn't afford a babysitter, and my father, well, let's just say he wasn't really in the picture a whole lot. We lived on the edge of a major city, and she worked at a salon downtown. So every morning we'd get up and she'd drive me to the salon, which took about an hour or so each way. I'd spend most of my time there playing my Game Boy while she worked. This was basically my childhood right up until I started school. I'm not sure why, but something about those daily trips ingrained an affinity for driving. Once I was old enough to get my license, you couldn't keep me out of my car. Family friends would often tell me that it gets old, but that never seemed to happen for me. I'd find almost any excuse to drive around. Hell, the first day I got my car, I even drove to the mailbox at the front of the driveway. I know, maybe that was a bit much, but I was just so excited. Within my close-knit group of friends, I was the only one with a car, so they would often ask me for rides everywhere. I was more than happy enough to oblige regardless of destination, provided they fronted some gas money, that is. It wasn't until my senior year in high school that an idea grew in my head. One of my teachers went around our class and asked us what our plans were for after graduation. A few classmates mentioned going to college, others going to work full-time, and a couple just had no clue. One girl in my class, however, said that she wanted to travel for a bit before deciding on what she wanted to do. I thought that was a great idea. During my junior year in school, I had gotten a part-time job working in a pizza place. The job itself was fine, but it definitely wasn't something I wanted to do with the rest of my life. The pay wasn't amazing, but I didn't have very many bills aside from my car and phone. So I had been saving up the remainder over the past year and a half for a rainy day. Even though I enjoy driving as much as I do, I've rarely traveled outside my city, let alone my own state. So my next decision was a travel destination. I had always wanted to visit California, and since it was only 2 states away, I figured that was as good a place as any. When I told my mom my intentions, she wasn't thrilled with the idea of me traveling across the country all on my own. But she herself actually traveled quite a lot when she was younger, so she really couldn't hold me back. 6 months passed by with the speed of molasses. It seemed like graduation day was always one more day away. It eventually arrived, and I was finally free of my time as a student, at least for the time being. I sort of half promised my mother that I'd go to college immediately upon coming home from my trip. Around a month or two after graduation, I had quit my part-time job at the pizza place. I had packed and repacked all my things numerous times, making sure I wasn't forgetting anything. After saying goodbye to my mom, I was finally ready to hit the road. Driving away from my city was a strange feeling. It was almost like leaving a part of me behind. As I watched it shrink in my rear view, I couldn't help but feel immediately homesick. That faded quickly, however, as I continued my journey on the highway. Throughout the first leg of my trip, everything was great. The roads were sparsely populated, which made driving much easier. The skies were bright and clear. I had a full tank of gas and was listening to some good music. At that moment in time, I was in heaven. As I was driving down the highway, gently nodding my head to my music, I glanced over and saw a small gas station sitting off the road. What struck me as odd was that it was blatantly in the middle of nowhere. Usually, gas stations require a turn off the highway, or are closer to towns. Not this one. It was simply sitting there, on the side of the road. I glanced down at my fuel gauge and was still at half a tank, so I disregarded it as I continued onward. Another couple of hours passed by and I noticed something approaching on the side of the road. Keep in mind, on this stretch of road, there was hardly anything aside from flatland for as far as the eye could see. It was another gas station on the horizon. I looked down at my gauge and saw that I had a quarter tank left. I considered stopping at this one, but that was until I got closer. It looked eerily similar to the one I had seen only a few hours before. I couldn't be certain if it was the exact same one, but I wasn't eager to find out. So I simply kept my eyes on the road, hoping I'd make it to a town soon. After another hour of driving, my fuel light blinked on, letting me know it was time to fill up. The once brightly sunny sky was steadily shifting into reds and oranges as I drove. I kept my eyes peeled for any signs for a town nearby. Then, on the horizon, a building started to slowly fade into existence, almost like a mirage of some kind. I squinted my eyes, and once I could see it clearly, I felt my heart beat faster in my chest. It was that same exact gas station from earlier. By this point, I absolutely didn't want to stop here, but my car silently mocked me with my fuel empty light. I had no other choice. I had to fill up my tank. I slowed down as I approached, and I could see the station more clearly. The pumps outside were pale white, yet partly overcome with rust. The building itself was made from dark wood and brick, though the materials looked aged and worn. Honestly, it looked more like an old-timey gift shop than a functioning gas station. My first instinct was to nope the hell out of there, but the incessant light on my dashboard made me think twice about that. I slowed my car to a crawl and pulled into the station. As I sat in my car parked next to the pumps, I felt uneasy. I wasn't sure whether it was the fact that I had seen this place before, or the fact that I was the only car around. I nervously glanced out my window, hoping to see any other cars nearby. I would have even taken cars driving on the highway, but there was absolutely nobody. After taking a few shallow breaths to steady my nerves, I opened my car door and stepped outside. I walked around to the pump, hoping I could just pay and be on my way with a full tank of gas. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. These pumps were quite old and didn't have the credit card readers built into them. I paused for a moment. I really didn't want to enter this building, but I didn't have much of a choice. I walked up to the entrance and cracked open the glass door. The interior had a musty smell to it, almost like the inside of a suitcase that hadn't been opened in years. I stepped inside and looked around. To my left were a couple of shelves with a few miscellaneous items on them. To my right was what appeared to be an ice chest, and a little further down were some cleaning supplies. Directly in front of me was the main counter, and behind it stood a man in his mid-30s. This may sound odd, but the man looked like the most out-of-place thing in the gas station. He was cleanly shaven, youthful, had a bright smile on his face, and just overall looked welcoming. I nodded to him as I walked up, and not wanting to be there much longer, I slapped down a $20 bill and told him to put it on the pump. When I did that, something weird happened, and by something, I mean nothing. The man didn't move, didn't take the money. He didn't even look at me as I spoke. He simply maintained this vacant, smiling expression. I nervously nodded once more to him and walked out of the gas station. Once outside, I quickly trotted over to my car and put the pump in my tank. Shocked is a good word to describe how I felt when the gas started flowing as I pumped. While my car filled up, I kept a watchful eye on my surroundings, making sure nothing was sneaking up on me. After a minute or so, I shifted my gaze back towards the building itself, and I saw the gas station clerk again. Only this time he was standing on the other side of the glass door. his grinning expression still unchanged. But something was different. I could no longer see his eyes. The top half of his face was obscured by shadow. When I saw him, I nearly tripped over the pump. I decided I had spent enough time here already. I returned the hose, hopped back in my car, and sped away. As I drove, I glanced in the rear view and I saw the gas station beginning to fade in the distance. And something else. The clerk was now standing in the middle of the road watching me leave. Once the building was completely out of sight, I sighed thankfully. But that was short-lived as I saw a building beginning to approach in the distance. It was that same gas station again. Not knowing what else to do, I slammed on my brakes and turned my car around. I drove back the way I came, and after a few hours, I saw something new. Road signs, indicating that I was re-entering my home state. I made it home not long after that, and my mom was quite surprised to see me. I told her that I just missed home too much. And it was true. I did miss my home a lot, but not for the reason she thinks. Since returning from my trip for the first time in my life, I haven't had the desire to drive anywhere. For those of you planning a road trip in the near future, take this as a word of caution. I don't know what that place was or where it even came from, but if you see a gas station start appearing over and over again, turn back before you are forced to stop there, just like I was.